morning everybody and welcome to the King's Cinema. Now my name is Emily and I'm a volunteer here at the museum. Today we're going to read a story called Powerhouse, Emily's Big Train Ride. I'm going to be asking you some questions about the story along the way. If you know the answer to a question, or even if you think you can guess, put your hand up. I might just choose you to tell us what you think the answer is. As I tell the story, you'll be able to see some of the photographs and illustrations from the story on the screen behind me. This book is based on the true story of a little girl called Emily and her pet rabbit. Emily used to love going on holidays to Canberra to visit her grandpa and play with his model train set. The authors, Margaret Simpson and Helen Whitty, were inspired by this and wrote a story about Emily and her toy bunny going on a journey with her grandpa to learn about the history of railways in New South Wales. Okay, let's start the story. Grandpa says, "Hello, Emily. I'm just working on my model railway. Would you like to help me?" Emily says, "Yes, please. Grandpa, why do you love trains so much?" Grandpa says, "Well, let me start from the beginning." Here is Emily and her bunny with a special steam train. Who can put their hand up quietly and have a guess at why it was called number one? Why do you think it was called number one?
I don't know.
You don't know? That's okay, but good try putting up your hand. What do you think, girls? Any ideas? Oh, very good. Well, the answer is this steam train was called number one because it pulled the first ever passenger train in New South Wales in 1855. That's over 150 years ago. That is a very long time. Oh look, here is Emily with her bunny travelling in a third-class carriage which is being pulled by loco number one. Emily says, "Why do we have to travel third class?" Grandpa says, "On steam trains there were three classes of passenger carriages. The first class was for wealthy people and was large with comfy seats. The second class had smaller compartments and seats that were not so comfy. And the third class only had hard seats and windows with no glass. People who travelled third class got covered in soot and smoke from the engine. Imagine that. Now, why do you think the third class was popular for train travel? Would anyone like to put their hand up and have a guess? Yes.
Because not many people are very rich.
Oh, very good. Well, let me tell you, the answer is that more people could afford to travel third class because the tickets did not cost as much money. Oh my goodness, what's happened here? Okay, boys and girls, look carefully at this old photograph on the screen. Who can put their hand up and have a guess what happened to this train? Do you want to put your hand up? Yes.
It's falling.
Oh, fantastic idea. It is falling, isn't it? Grandpa says, sometimes, back in the early days of rail travel, trains accidentally ran off the train track or rails. When this happened, people said the train had derailed. One night in 1901, the driver of this locomotive found to his horror that the brakes did not work. Luckily, the driver and the fireman jumped from the cab seconds before the train stopped, right on the edge of the cliff. Oh my goodness, it was lucky that nobody was hurt. Ooh, look at this lovely poster advertising a circus. Put your hands on your heads if you have ever been to the circus. I have.
I have.
Good. Now, what could the circus have to do with steam trains? Well, during the time that steam trains were being used all over New South Wales, the circus was very popular in Australia. Grandpa says, word circus travelled to country towns in a special circus train. In the 1920s, the train carried 20 elephants, 40 horses, 14 cages of wild animals, a ticket office, and the seals with their pool. This photograph on the screen is of Alice the elephant. Emily says, will the elephant squash the train? Grandpa says, no, never. Alice was a working elephant and was helping to unload the circus train in Melbourne. At one circus performance, the circus gave Alice a 100th birthday party and she cut a huge cake with a knife. Grandpa really did know a lot about steam trains and about all the people and the circuses and the elephants that used to travel by steam train. Emily says, Grandma is always telling me you're an old romantic when it comes to trains. Grandpa says, steam trains made so much of our history, so it's important we remember them. That's why you can see old engines when you visit museums, and why volunteers keep some old trains running even today. But you could tell Grandma I'm only romantic about her. The end. Thank you, everybody. That is the end of the story, but there's a couple of more things to show you on the screen and tell you about. While you're at the museum today, you can visit the real number 1 locomotive train on level 3. It looks like this. Now, we think Emily's bunny might still be in that train, so boys and girls, see if you can find it. And after you've done that, you can go all the way down the stairs or the escalators or down in the lift to the transport exhibition, where you can climb aboard locomotive 1243 and pretend to be a real steam train driver. Thanks so much for listening to our story. Please come down to the front if you want to have a closer look at the book Emily's Big Train Ride, which is for sale in the museum shop if you want to take one home. Enjoy the rest of your day at the Powerhouse Museum.